So with that, I'm going to just introduce Brian. So Brian is a registered clinical counselor and a mindfulness meditation teacher. The father of 3, Brian has been in the helping profession and working with youth for 25 years, including alternative schools, drop-in center at the homeless youth, and outreach in the downtown east side, and currently working with youth and parents in his private practice and therapy. Brian is Jesse's partner, and they are based out of the Sunshine Coast. In non-COVID times, Brian travels widely, speaking at workshops and conferences, as well as leading meditation retreats internationally. And you can also visit his website at www.briandeanwilliams.com for more information. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Brian, and I hope you can share the screen okay.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Guy.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Yeah, thanks for the invitation to be here. It's really nice to see all of you. My name is Brian, and I'm really excited to be here. And like all of you, I have multiple identities. One of them is that I'm a Star Wars fan, as you can see. And this headset, though, is not a prop for the background. It's just really good at keeping the background noise of our kids out of your ears. So that's why I have that on. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here this evening and to share a few thoughts. And so I'll just get right into it here. Can you all see that? Can you give me a thumbs up? Okay, awesome. All right, so I always like to just begin with a few acknowledgements. So we used to live where you do for the last 20 years or so. Jesse and I lived there together with our kids, but we just relocated up to the unceded traditional territories of the Squamish Nation, just to the south of us, and where we are is specifically the Shishal Nation. So we are the settler name for it is the Sunshine Coast, and it's been living up to its name lately, which is really nice after what we went through in January. Thanks to Sky and the DPAC exec for organizing this and for inviting us to be here. We're really honored by that. And I really want to thank all of you for taking the time this evening to do this. I know that many of you have been working, you're managing a pandemic, you're managing parenting, there's a lot going on, and it would have been really easy to just do a deep dive into your favorite Netflix show, and you chose to be here. So I really, really appreciate that. All right, so just a few, before we get into this, I like to talk a little bit about creating a safe enough space. We can never guarantee a completely safe space, and also we're not here to do therapy necessarily, but there may be some aspects of it that can be therapeutic, and we'll have some opportunities to share if you'd like to. So we could share in the chat, people will ask questions. And so I just really ask that we keep what is said here in this virtual circle together and not gossip about it outside of the circle. And the only exceptions to that are ones that you're probably familiar with anyway. In the unlikely event that you tell us that you're planning to hurt yourself or somebody else, or if we hear that there's a child in danger that needs protection, then we have to get other people involved. Other than that, it's in the vault. Trying to pay attention to safety as much as possible. So deep commitment to consent, and to one thing I would suggest is not giving unsolicited advice, maybe asking somebody if they'd like feedback on something, if they've shared something. Taking care of your needs. So if you need to get up and stretch, that's welcome. If you're a doodler and you like to doodle while you're listening, then that's welcome as well. So whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, we encourage that. Water is a good thing as well. And something that can be really tricky in this Zoom landscape that we've been in lately is limiting distractions. So it's really easy to have multiple tabs open, checking your spreadsheet or email or live tweeting what we're doing here. If you really need to do that, that's fine, but it might be an interesting experiment as well, just to monotask. We're so accustomed as parents to multitasking. So what would it be like just to really be present for each other here and to really show up for each other in a good way? And to be really generous with our attention with one another and for ourselves. All right, so I just wanted to start off with an invitation for you to share and to get some of your voices in the room. And So a lot of my therapy, the therapy side of my practice is based in narrative therapy, and in narrative therapy, what we're known for is asking questions. It's very based in questions, rather than telling people what to do. I'm not very good at telling people what to do, so I tend to ask a lot of questions. So my questions for you are, as a parent or grandparent or caregiver or support person, I'm curious about how is it that you survived and gotten this far into the pandemic? Like what is it that's been carrying you through? Is it art? Is it nature? Is it your kids? What is it? And also, who or what have you connected with that's allowed you to be this resilient? So kind of a different spin on a similar question. So if you'd like, you can answer both of those, or you can answer them separately. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to do something interesting. Some of you may have heard of a Padlet. So in the chat, under my name, you'll see you're going to see a URL that I'm going to paste in there. And Padlets are interesting. So in a Padlet, yeah, if you click on this link here, it's going to take you to a website, and it's basically like a collective bulletin board for all of us. And you'll see that there is I'll share my screen here. So those of you who don't want to click on it or aren't clicking on it, you'll be able to see it. But so here you'll see that there's the question up there. And then if you go to the bottom right, there's a plus sign. And if you hit the plus sign, if you click on that, you can start typing in some answers to the question, and it's anonymous, which is kind of convenient too. So if you want to start typing this in, then we're basically going to create this collective palette together about what's helping you to get through. So we've got stepping out, sense of humor, lots of laughter, watching comedy and stand up. Nice. Yeah, Jesse and I do a lot of that too. One day at a time, sense of duty. Yeah, nice. Reconnecting with old friends far away. Jesse and I have organized a couple online game nights with some of our relatives from Ontario. That's been kind of fun. We wouldn't do that under normal circumstances. Yeah. Not listening to people who say my kid's getting too much screen time. Nice. So practicing some parenting autonomy. Right on. Going outside for bike ride and walks. Some really great stuff here. Lowering expectations and doing less. Yes, I love that. I need a tattoo of that. Walking the dog. Sharing Star Trek with the kids. Nice. Yeah, more time with the kids is good and bad, both. Lowering expectations. Remembering that you're partly introverted. Firm breaks from tech. Nice. It's challenging for a lot of us. Minimizing social media. Eating when you're hungry, not on a specific schedule. I love it. Great. Yeah. Regular meditation. Yeah, that's something that's really important to me as well. Going off camera on Zoom. There you go. Nice. Okay, so you can yeah, you can keep watching those come up if you like while I talk on the website. In Zoom here, I'll put my PowerPoint back up. So you can see that there's lots of different ways of doing this, right? There's not necessarily one particular way. And something that I've been reflecting on during the pandemic is that, I want to be very respectful towards people on the call and in the world who've been negatively impacted by COVID. Absolutely. It's been a very difficult time for many people. And there's also the other side of it is there's also this opportunity that we have that we have an opportunity to take up. And one of those opportunities that we have that Sky invited me to speak about is making and holding space for compassionate work. And one of the traditions that I study in and teach in is the Buddhist tradition. And in the Buddhist tradition, the Buddhist word for compassion is karuna. And karuna means a fluttering of the heart in response to another's pain. And we've had so many opportunities to do that in public spaces with one another, in shopping spaces, and in day-to-day with friends and family who are struggling. And even though we've been physically distant, there's been all these opportunities for us to practice compassion. And that's something that we can cultivate in our lives, and something that I think that COVID has given us an opportunity to do. Um, One thing that the Israeli historian Harari talks about is, this isn't a quote from him, but similar gist as him, which is, during the COVID-19 pandemic, never before have people taken such strong action, not just for themselves, but for the health and well-being of all the millions of humans who they've never met. So we've all rallied together around this, and not just for ourselves and for our families, but for these strangers that we see. So that's a really interesting thing, because early in our evolution, we were much more concerned just about our immediate village, and now we're expanding this compassion on a more global sort of scale. Another opportunity that we have is to work with reactivity. I don't know, any other parents out there that react sometimes to their kids, or is it just me? Yeah, so that's something that I get caught up in a lot too. And so, during the pandemic, it's really easy for tempers to get short. It's easy for us to be reactive. And I, over the last few years, inspired by a great academic named Stephen Batchelor, I've adapted, with his permission, I've adapted one of his models, and I've been using this model for myself in my life, and with many of my clients as well. And it's a way of learning how to respond rather than reacting to spicy emotions, right? Some of these emotions that we have, like envy, anger, um, greed, sadness, they're spicy, right? Sometimes we actually get hot. It's like Yosemite Sam, and it feels like the steam is blowing out of your ears. And so, um, and if you don't like this, if you don't like salsa, or you don't like that metaphor, then if you're more of a dancer, then you can think about it as dancing with difficult emotions rather than wrestling with them all the time. And part of where this came from, further to Sky's point of being environmentally active, is for my 20 years in Vancouver, I was on my bike a lot. I was a daily bike commuter, and and there were times when I didn't really act my best on my bike. If somebody would open their door on me, it might seem really peaceful now, but I lost it pretty regularly when people would open their doors on me or right turn into me. Sometimes I would just flip my lid, and then afterwards I would feel horrible. I'd feel embarrassed, and I'd wonder if my boss saw me, or if one of my clients had seen me, and they probably wanted to run cyclists down even more because I was kind of acting like a jerk. So as my mindfulness practice started developing, and the way that it started blossoming in my everyday life, is I started this approach of, when somebody opens their door on me. Now I'm not perfect, but more often now, if somebody opens their door on me, I'll stop, not just the handbrakes, but I'll stop that impulse to preach at them, or to teach them a lesson, or to get retribution. And I'll just tap the brakes, not only physically but also mentally. And the A is for I'll allow the sensations in my body. So I'll notice this symphony of reactivity that's happening in my body. My heart rate might be coming up. There's this adrenaline rush that's happening, racing thoughts, and I can inhale into those and give them permission to exist rather than just trying to suppress them. And the L is for letting be. And for me, what that feels like is exhaling, or letting go, or softening the muscles around these difficult emotions. So essentially, you're using your body to process reactivity or difficult emotions rather than just figuring it out cognitively. And when we do that, the second S is, we see impermanence. We see that the nature of the universe and the nature of our emotions are not that different, that they're impermanent. Everything is always shifting and changing, and it's always been that way since the Big Bang. And our emotional lives can't be any different than that. I don't know if you've ever tried to stay mad for a full day for 12 hours, but it's really difficult to do, because the nature of emotions is that they crest and they fall. And I find that when I take this approach, I'm able to notice that and to see that truth more clearly. And then we have to do something, right? So we have to, one concern that I had coming into mindfulness was that it might make me kind of passive and complicit with injustice in the world. And so far, that hasn't been my experience. I feel like I'm still very engaged in political and environmental causes that I'm very passionate about, but I find that I'm doing it in a less reactive way. And so in the bike scenario, I've had an opportunity a few times at the next stoplight to stop and non-violently knock on the truck window and say, "Hey, my name's Brian. I have 3 kids at home. I got really scared back there because you almost hit me by accident. And can we keep a closer eye out for each other out here?" And I get a very different response. The people say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" And there's this, they're expressing compassion to me. There's this connection that's made. And what I love about it is they have, their consciousness is raised, but I also leave with my integrity intact because I didn't lose my mind. But I still I stood up for something that I believe in, and that's important to me. And so it's a more of a win-win scenario. So I've been trying to apply this, admittedly with mixed results because I'm not perfect, but with my kids, right? When you're in a confined space with your kids during a pandemic, these difficult emotions can come up. And in my better moments, before just reacting, I'm able to stop and allow the sensations in my body, give them permission to exist, seeing that the nature of them is that they're impermanent, and then acting with integrity, maybe getting some support from Jesse, um, talking to them about my emotional life and trying to model that, especially because we have boys. So we're trying to model emotional intelligence for our boys in the world. And yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like. So I wanted to offer that as a model, and maybe after I stop talking, I can post this in the chat as a image, if that's, I don't know if it accepts JPEGs or not, but or PNG files, but I'll try to post it there anyway. And you're free to click on it, use it, print it out. You can put it on next to your computer or your family fridge if this is helpful to you, if this kind of model might be something that's helpful to you. Sky, how are we doing on time? Do you feel like I should kind of let Galen come in here?
Yeah, if you
Yeah,
can kind of wrap it up in a minute or two, and then I
yeah,
think we'll go directly to Galen because of the time. But thank you, that was
yeah,
great.
yeah, that sounds great. So I'm just going to see, one of my downfalls is I usually like over prepare for these things, and I have like a 2-day workshop worth of slides. So yeah, I guess I have a lot more that I could say, but maybe one thing that I will say, okay, I'll say one more thing. You know, even before the pandemic, pre-pandemic, there was a special on CBC. I think it might have been December 2019 or maybe January 2020, and about loneliness, about this epidemic of loneliness that's happening, particularly in Vancouver. And as a therapist, many of my clients who come from other places have reported just having a real profound sense of loneliness sometimes. I don't know if it has to do with the climate or the expensiveness of the city and everybody hustling to get by. But even before the pandemic, in a 2019 survey of 800 British Columbians by the United Way, 46% reported feeling sometimes lonely. More than a third felt isolated from other people in their community. And 2 in 5 British Columbians don't have many people to talk to in their neighborhoods. How's that? That's like heartbreaking for me to read. So what I've been finding during the pandemic is that we have this opportunity to start to repair that, even though we're physically distant. It's kind of paradoxical. We're social animals. We need connection. So if you're feeling lonely and finding it difficult, you're not imagining things, and we can do something about it. And so that's where the power of connection really comes in, and that's the way that we can stand together against loneliness and isolation. And I usually speak to each of these in much more detail, but I'm just going to run through these really quick. We're already connected. Sometimes I have to remind myself of that. Our body cells are replaced every 7 to 10 years. There's this exchange of oxygen, CO2, water, and minerals that's always happening. And climate change and COVID are opportunities for us to understand how interdependent we actually are. And we've had a real stark reminder of that, of the preciousness of life and how interdependent we all are on one another. So there's many different things that we can do to stay connected. Galen's going to lead us through, I believe, some mindfulness, and that's something that's been really important to me as a way of staying connected to my body and to the present moment, to nature, which I think Galen is also going to talk about. So this will be hopefully a nice segue for you, Galen. And to novelty and wonder, seeing the world through a child's eyes, right? It's just really opening our eyes to where we are and how amazing it is to be in a human form at this particular time in history. And to creativity and new skills, I've taken great delight in doing some drawing classes with my kids online, and learning to play the guitar, which is something I've been wanting to do for 20 years. It's been really nice. Some of us find it helpful to connect to ancestors, and I've been thinking about what was it like for my ancestors in the pandemics that they went through. What was it like? And been researching a little bit about my great grandparents who lived through the Spanish flu. And then also like connecting to our grief, and in our culture we tend to avoid grief and maybe suppress grief or ignore grief, and there's been opportunities here for us actually to grieve some of our losses, and that there's some growth that can happen from that, and sometimes rites of passage and ceremony can help us with that. And to community, even if it needs to be an online community for now, or socially distant walks outside if that's allowed in your area. And from that comes this sense of resilience. And Michael Ungar, who's a resiliency expert from Dalhousie, talks about resilience as the ability to gather community resources in order to meet a challenge. So it's not just about pulling up your bootstraps and kind of doing it yourself. It's more about gathering collectively and gathering our resources collectively to meet a challenge, which is, I think, what we're up to tonight. And in doing so, we're often transformed into something completely different by moving through that together. I have a lot more to say. I want to be respectful about the time. Thank you so much for your attention and for allowing me to share this with you. And if there's anything else that I can do to help you in terms of therapy or workshops, I'm around. So let me know. Thank you. And by the way, you can just call me Brian. I just have the Dean in my name because I have the most white conventional name in North America. So it distinguishes me from the basketball player and the CBC sportscaster and all that. So you can just call me Brian. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Brian, for that. And yeah, it was great. And so I really appreciate, and I really liked that Padlet. It was a very interesting way to share. So that was
cool.
Very
thanks. Yeah,
cool.
Jesse introduced me to that. They're fun.
Nice. Yeah. So I'm going to introduce Galen now. And so Galen is a registered clinical counselor, an art therapist, and a leadership development specialist, a certified coach, a teacher, a workshop facilitator, and yoga teacher living in Vancouver, British Columbia. In addition to her own practice, Galen is an associate faculty member for the Ministry of School Counseling at City University, and works with clients, early childhood educators, and teachers to bring relational and resiliency informed, compassionate, focused, and inclusive learning, teaching, and art practices and principles into organizations. So classrooms and communities, and Galen is an integrationalist, and she's an integrationist who works at the intersection of psychotherapy, contemplative practice, and neuroscience. So there's a lot that I'm sure she's going to speak to about this via the eclectic practice, which from looking at her website, she obviously brings a lot of these things to it. So if you want to learn more about, she's doing an upcoming trauma-informed practice workshop. So you can also visit her website at www.flynestconsulting.com for more on that, if that's something. So I'm right now going to, so Galen, are you ready? I'm just going to find you so I can spotlight you on here.
Great.
There you go. All right.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Sky. And thanks so much for so beautifully setting the table, Brian. I'm going to echo many of the things that you've spoke to. So hopefully this kind of repeated wave of some of these themes will help us, really let some of these juicy bits sink in. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope that works out. It's always an adventure in Zoom land. Always so thrilling. Anything's really possible, has been my experience. And I'm going to just dive right in. Thank you, Sky, for that lovely introduction. And I just wanted to really acknowledge that there's such a diversity of experience for how things have been going for people. You know, we've all sort of been riding collectively, but very differently, this sometimes painful sort of COVID coaster with its ups and downs. And in many ways, this diversity really has a lot to do with our inequities, our privilege, our access to resources, our supports. And if you're like me, you know, up until now, you may have just been like sprinting from decision to decision, or change, or fear, or maybe even crisis to crisis. And really what I'm inviting you to do here tonight is sort of to take a reassessment and to think about, rather than sprinting, that this is a marathon, and building in some sustainability. If you'll help me extend the metaphor, some water breaks, some snack breaks, some high fives along the way to help us really go the distance here as we continue on this journey together. So, you know, while humans are incredibly adaptable and flexible and nimble, and for many people there have been opportunities, as Brian spoke to, that some of these changes have offered us, there's one thing that will never change, is that humans are wired for connection. And so although there may be a new normal down the road for some people, they're still really experiencing ambiguous grief and loss, and normal seems like a really long way away. And the other piece is, what will never be normal is to be separate from each other, to be disconnected. And so what I'd like us to kind of reflect on as we work here together is how to pay attention to some of the skills and tools that we have to help build our resilience to go the distance. That being said, as an uninvited guest and settler here on the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam lands, I really want to honor that I'm coming from the land, water, and air of these First Nations people, and raise my hands up in gratitude for this opportunity to present here. You know, a territorial acknowledgement can just seem like a very first step to working on decolonization and building best relationship with the First People of Canada, but it's a really important one, and connecting to these old growth forests is some of the magic that I'd like to talk a little bit about today. Brian already did a beautiful piece around sort of setting our context together. The one thing I wanted to highlight is that I'm going to be talking a little bit about trauma. And for some people, even the word trauma can be really activating or stressful. So just reiterating Brian's invitation to just take care of yourself in any way that works for you. If you need to turn off your camera or like stretch, might even just do that right now. Anything that helps you stay connected, keep your learning brain working, and help you hopefully pick up a few new tips and tricks, or maybe just remind you of some things that you know that already work for you. And I wanted to sort of lead with some principles. So just really the understanding that part of the human experience is difficulty, and is suffering, and is challenge. There are many joyous and incredible, beautiful pieces about being a human, but just the understanding that every life is hard, but some lives are hard all the time. And then also just kind of holding on to your basic okayness in this very moment. So we can't change what's happened in the past, and we don't know what's going to happen in a very unpredictable future. But if you're able to sort of ground your feet on the floor, take a deep breath every now and then, and sort of hopefully you're sitting in a comfy chair, you have access to technology, you're here in community with people ready and willing to learn. So just really grabbing onto the good enough right now, basic okayness, all right nowness. It can be a really useful tool in moments of stress or real grief and difficulty, just holding on to the very moment of now. I want to talk a little bit about positive neuroplasticity. Rick Hansen is one of sort of the leaders in this field, and perhaps you've heard about this idea, neuroplasticity. It's sort of this metaphor of a plastic, changeable brain. In fact, it can change all the time in both its structure and function by every interaction, relationship, activity that we have. In fact, the brain is so incredible. There are about 1 billion neurons and 5,000 connections. And so the whole brain is wiring and it's at this great neural forest, kind of laying down these new neural pathways of experience and patterns of behavior. And the really exciting thing is it's changing all the time. So we can always grow, we can always learn and develop as we move through the world. The issue here, of course, is that humans have this negativity bias. Our Paleolithic brothers and sisters were always worried about being eaten, and so paying attention to dangerous things that were going to get us became vital, in fact, life-sustaining. And today, most of us aren't worried about that high level of threat, but we have this ongoing cumulative stress, and our body doesn't necessarily know the difference. So it could be the stress of biking or traffic or an email box, or whether we're going to make the rent, or the ongoing stress of working 2 jobs and living with like neurodiversity in your family, any number of things. So one of the ways, one of the tools that we can employ to help kind of balance that negativity bias that's part of our evolutionary heritage is really kind of stretching out the positive things that happen, really letting them sink in and savor the moments and the actual feelings of good things when they happen. John Gottman, who's known for being a sort of family and relationship expert, says it's sort of a 5-to-1 ratio, 5 good things to every 1 negative thing that comes in. It helps kind of create that balance that we're looking for. So I'd invite you to sort of take in anything beautiful or helpful that works for you. It might be something in your room that gives you joy or glee. I have a ridiculous unicorn that gives me some happiness when, you know, things are getting rough or seeming kind of hard. And again, just an invitation to take care of yourself. I'm going to invite you to do a few different practices with me, but you're the boss. Just do whatever works for you. So I'm going to talk a little bit to your brain, but I'm hopefully also going to encourage you to listen to your body, because what we're working for here together is sort of an integration. If you can imagine, we're all really like big balloons with tiny little strings moving around the world with our thoughts and our plans and our ideas. And really many of us have just kind of forgotten that we carry this incredible body that is gathering data all the time and sending messages all the way. And so really just inviting you to kind of pay attention to how you feel and what's up down there as we hopefully learn here together. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about the what, and then hopefully I'm going to talk a little bit about the how. So I just want to make sure that when I'm talking about trauma, we sort of have an updated understanding. These are just 3 definitions. There are many out there, but Gabor Mate was a physician, is still a physician, but did a lot of work on the downtown east side and Vancouver. And this definition really resonates for me. It used to be that we thought that trauma was a one-time thing that happened to you. And now we have a much more expansive understanding that it can be many types of experiences, it can be cumulative, and it really matters about what sort of resources and supports you have around you and how you will respond to it. So Gabor Mate says, trauma is what happens inside of you as a result of traumatic events. It is a loss of connection to oneself and to the present moment. In my definition, it's not what happens to you externally that defines the trauma, but what happens internally to you as a result of it. So the word trauma is from the Greek word wound. And, again, Gabor Mate sort of talks about when you get injured, what develops on top of the injury is a scar that is tough and difficult and not flexible and not limber and doesn't, let anything in. It kind of armors up. And he describes trauma as a psychic wound that hardens you psychologically and that interferes with your ability to grow and develop. So there are lots of different types of trauma. I've talked a little bit about sort of the big T, sort of a single incident trauma, and that might be like a car accident or a veteran returning from war after, experiencing incredible hardship. But there are also lots of little t's that accumulate over time. Systems trauma is a very real reality that many people are living with day to day. And so that can mean like the cumulative weathering of racism or the after effects of colonialism, homophobia, sexism, poverty. The list is long, but little by little, they can build up to cause incredible stress and hardship in a neurophysiological way. So our body and our brain and our spirit can be deeply impacted. What I'm going to mostly focus on today is chronic trauma. And one definition of this is that it results from this repeated and prolonged exposure to highly stressful events. One thing people may not be aware of is that we can also inherit trauma that's not ours. That's called epigenetic trauma. But in some studies, we carry trauma from our ancestors 3 generations. And in nematodes, which are little worms, it's 14 generations. So it is possible some of the trauma that you're carrying isn't even yours. But focusing back to sort of this collective trauma. And what COVID-19 has sort of excavated and kind of highlighted is the inequities that were already there. And long before COVID-19, this idea about parental burnout was very alive in the world. One of the real challenges with this is that it helps to isolate us from one another. And to Brian's point, loneliness is one of our major crises. So this is sort of understood as extreme mental and physical exhaustion. Some of the symptoms may be sleep loss or cascading health issues. It can bring out intense conflict and that irritability and frustration. And right now there's like the Instagram worthy family that's, you know, shiny and new at all times, or an innumerable number of books that tell you how to optimize your parenting for your children's success. And so what can happen is people see other people parenting in style or, you know, perfect parenting, and they can start to think, well, I'm not doing that. Oh no, I guess I'm not doing it right. And what can happen is they can really turn in. There's a lot of stigma around not good enoughness, particularly around parenting. And so there can be an increase of guilt and shame and isolation. So COVID-19 kind of only creates this amplification of these already real stressors that many families are contending with, only again amplified if you have difficulty or stress in your family system. Now, the really good news is that people heal from trauma every day, all the time. And some of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit is the use of self-compassion and connection as a real antidote to trauma. So beautifully, Brian introduced us to this sort of concept of loneliness as the root cause of our suffering. Vivek Murthy has done like a substantive study on this. And really what we're seeing is things that are identified as depression and anxiety and all sorts of downstream mental health crises have underneath them this root cause of loneliness. And so when I'm talking about loneliness, I'm talking about loneliness from yourself, not having people that you can connect with or being vulnerable with. And you can even be lonely in a crowded room, in a family, or lonely in a marriage. And it's one of the most effective ways to help your body be activated and feel a threat response. And so when your body feels threat, again, this is all happening below the level of conscious thought. There is a surge. Your amygdala is part of your limbic system that sets off this alarm system. And then you get these cascading chemicals of cortisol and adrenaline that helps mobilize you if you have to freeze, fight, or flee. But if you get these stress hormones going every day and you can't turn them off, which is the case for many of us when we have chronic long-term stress, it creates this perfect soup in our brain that really leads to a lot of incredibly unwell people in our world. So it shuts down the immune system. It shuts down our antiviral response that helps with infection. And it creates this perfect sort of breeding ground for inflammation. So all the worst kind of cancers, you know, all sorts of degenerative diseases, all can be pointed to this inflammation response that a long-term stress response really does feed. And people are really misunderstanding a lot about what loneliness can look like. It can look, as I said before, like anxiety, like depression, and it can look like substance use disorder as people try really hard to cope with, you know, the despair or difficulty of life. And the other piece that can happen is after a period of time when you've kind of shut down and gone quiet, there can be this really reactive being like, it's not me, it's actually you. So it can kind of turn into aggression or increased polarization or increased racism or othering of other people, and be really misunderstood as, you know, a deeply lonely person acting out of despair. And just to be clear, this intersectional trauma that I spoke a little bit about, the income inequality that is, you know, one of the things that divides us the most in the world, or stigma around, you know, life's experiences, or adverse childhood experiences. All of these things can really start to pile on top of each other to really kind of light the fire of loneliness. Steve Cole, who's a university, is a researcher on loneliness out of the University of Los Angeles, talks about quiet suffering of loneliness and how many people experience it. And it's at that molecular level that it ranks right up there with poverty and trauma and bereavement and all sorts of much more dramatic things. And Juliana Holt-Lundstedt did this big meta study around all the research, and she really found that, you know, having rich social connections is a deeply protective factor, and it can increase, help protect you against mortality by 50%. We're deeply wired for connection, and the impact of this lack of social connection is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So really just to highlight the value of it. Now, what's happening with COVID-19 is that there's incredible dissonance. Our nervous system and our ancient Paleolithic brain and body is saying, I need to be with people and connection. And meanwhile, we have this very real threat of COVID-19 that says, no, stay away, danger, danger. And this increased kind of push-pull is incredibly stressful and difficult to weather. And so what I'm going to offer, there's just very, very simple basic practices here today to help kind of bring us into this more regulated, more calm place, particularly for women, but also other people. Putting yourself at the front of a list of sort of self-care seems quite radical, especially if you have little children. You probably have a long list of other people to care for before you get to yourself. But I'd really like to advocate for this as like an emergency measure. It's a triage sort of situation where you absolutely need to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help anybody else. One of the ways that we can do this is exchanging the voice in our head that most people have, that is some sort of version of an inner critic who's sort of berating you or just saying not good enough or you should have tried harder, and swapping out that inner critic for an inner coach. This research comes out of sports psychology, and we really have this false belief that really if we push ourselves and we just, you know, yell at ourselves, we'll do better, we'll reach our goals, and we'll be more motivated. And in fact, the research absolutely does not support that. Having a gentle, supportive coach in your brain, cheering you on, celebrating your successes, makes a huge difference as we move towards wellness and dreaming for the things that we're working towards. So if you're like, self-care in a pandemic, you're just like, you know, wacky, or, you know, if you're going to give me a long list of things to do, I'm going to like shake my fist at the sky. Like, I just want to say, I see you. And if any of this isn't a good fit for you right now, that's okay. Just kind of tuck it in your backpack for another day when you feel like there's something else you want to do, or another way you want to be that might be helpful as you move on this long marathon towards what I've heard is a 2024 COVID party. So this is a very simple practice. It's free. Sometimes when we think about self-care, we think about something we do before a crisis to kind of build up our energy reserves, or something after to recover from difficult times. And although those are both really great things to do and valuable, what I'm hoping to offer here today is two sort of different practices to work right in the moment. You know, when you're waiting for COVID-19 results, or when, you know, you're feeling your heart rate going up and you're just, you know, really in the midst of a difficult moment. You know, I work with lots of teachers who have to go from classroom to classroom, or when you're working with different clients in a moment of sort of transition. And it's just a simple breath practice. There's lots of different names for it: pranayama, or belly breathing, or coherent breathing. And it's really super simple. It's just having a longer exhalation than your inhalation. When we inhale, our heart rate goes up, and when we exhale, our heart rate goes down. When we exhale these long, slow breaths, it tells our sympathetic nervous system that it's okay, we're not going to be eaten at this moment. So our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and our digest, our mate and create connection system kind of goes on, and we can settle our nervous system. And when this happens, it turns off some of those stress hormones I talked about before, the cortisol and the adrenaline, and it starts to kind of get some of those like happy serotonin or oxytocin, perhaps you've heard of sort of the love hormone, the connection hormone, into our body, and helps us kind of regulate and be present, and opens us up to creativity and really rich conversations out of that reactive and stressful stance. So if you're game, I just invite you to give it a try with me. So again, just do whatever works for you. You know, feel free to turn off your camera, and you certainly don't have to close your eyes for this. For people who really are living in trauma, having your eyes closed is not a fit. Even breath practices can be really triggering. So just go slow and know that we're just playing here together. You don't have to get it right. I'm just going to invite you to breathe in with me for 2 breaths, breathe out with me for 4. And we'll just do that a few times together, and just notice what you notice. How does it feel? Is it helpful? If it is, do it again. If it isn't, it's not for you tonight. So I'm just going to kind of ground my feet. You may want to lengthen your spine up. Might even start with it just sort of reaching up to the sky and kind of extending your body out ever so slightly. Just knowing your body, you're the expert on you. I might want to turn my neck just a little bit to the right, see where I am, maybe to the left. And then if you like, you can close your eyes or soften your gaze, or just look in front of you as we inhale for 2 breaths. And exhale for 4. Inhale for 2. Exhale for 4. And you can move any part of your body that works for you, inhaling with your hands, bringing it in. And exhaling out. And then do it a couple more times if you like, and just see how it feels. Slow and steady. You don't even have to count in your head. Just the whole point is to lengthen on the exhale. This is something that's great in traffic. That's great when you know, you've got your short person loud and proud telling you about, you know, Brussels sprouts at a really high volume, something I have a real lived experience with. Just breathing, grounding helps keep that learning brain, that you know, prefrontal cortex that helps us make good decisions and respond, keeps it online so we don't, as Brian said, flip our lid. The other practice I'd like to introduce you to, or perhaps remind you of, is called the self-compassion break. And this is Dr. Kristen Neff and Chris Germer, and they have piles of these resources all over their sites. You can Google it on YouTube. There are all sorts of examples. And it's a 3-part practice, and we'll just, again, play an experiment with it tonight, if you will. It involves mindfulness, common humanity, and self-compassion or kindness. So Dr. Kristen Neff is sort of one of the foremost researchers in this area of self-compassion, and has piles of fantastic meditations and resources that can help really mobilize your own gentleness and kindness for your personal wellness. What can happen is when we get stressed is we can start to really ruminate. We can kind of fixate on a thought and just go over it and over it. Dr. Julian Lundstedt sort of looked at how long it takes for an emotion to live in our body from a physiological place, and it's only really 90 seconds that we have a beginning to end response to an emotion, unless we feed it with a thought, and then we can keep it alive for days and weeks and months. So what we're looking to do here is sort of interrupt that thought pattern and just attend to what's happening right here in the now. The next piece is around sort of that common connection that we have to all other humans on the planet, that we in fact are not alone. This is to combat that kind of armoring up, that disappearing into ourselves, and remind us that part of the human experience is to feel these difficult emotions, and that's just part of being alive. And that third part is to combat that self-criticism, that self-judgment that many of us carry with us. First, we feel the pain, and then we add a level of pain by blaming ourselves. So we have an injury, and then an injury upon our injury as we sort of beat ourselves up. So if you'll play with me, I'd invite you to come along and we'll try this practice together, knowing this is just the first time we're doing it. And really, this becomes really powerful when you refine some of the language to make it really fit for you. So I'm going to offer you some phrases. They may not feel like the ones that really resonate with you. So just, again, make it your own. So if you will, find a comfortable sitting place. And again, you're welcome to close your eyes, or you sure don't have to. Maybe just start by rolling your shoulders up to your ears and just dropping them down with an exhale. Just notice that you're sitting. Maybe wiggle your toes ever so slightly. And just notice what you notice. Checking out that body, seeing if it's waking up or sending you any messages about what's happening for you right here in the right now. And then what I'd like you to do, if you're willing, is think about something that's difficult and true that's happening for you right now. And on a scale of 1 to 10, don't choose a 10. Choose a 5 or a 6. It's something that's hard, something that hurts, something that you're struggling with. Perhaps it's at home, or perhaps it's at work. Perhaps it's out in the greater world, but it makes your heart hurt. And see if you can bring it to life in your mind. Think about some of the players. Really see if you can feel it in your body. And then as you breathe and notice, I'd invite you to try a phrase, something like, "This hurts." And you can say it out loud or quietly to yourself. Or perhaps something like, "This is a moment of suffering." Or perhaps, "This is really hard." And so we're naming it to tame it. Just noticing. And then we'll move to the second piece, this common humanity part. Knowing that right now, there are millions, if not more, people all over the world that are feeling exactly as you're feeling. And if they were in your situation, they'd be feeling this way too. So there's no place to feel shame or guilt about the truth of your feeling. We are not alone. Just noticing. You are not alone. See if you can take that in and hold it. As we move to the third part of this practice, and this is where we kind of try and bring in some self-kindness or some compassion to this difficult and real part of being a human. And again, finding words that fit for you. But see if you can use a voice in your head as you talk to yourself, the same voice that you might use for a loved one if they came to you with this exact problem. Speaking to ourselves softly and gently can make a big difference with our ability to take in kindness. Another piece that can be really powerful is healing touch. So it's different for everybody, but many people like to take a hand and put it on their heart. So just experimenting and see what feels right for you. Some people like to take a fist and put it on our hearts for strength and compassion. For some people, it's holding a hand, cupping their cheeks and their face, or just giving themselves like a really strong and upright hug. Touching yourself and talking to yourself with kindness and compassion. And then, again, finding a phrase that feels true for you. That might sound something like, I'm so sorry. Or, you can handle hard things. You can do this. Taking it in, finding a phrase that feels true for you, and giving yourself what you need. Breathing it in and out. And just noticing what you notice. Do you feel a settling? Do you feel something helpful? And then the last piece of this is thinking about what you need after this. Do you need to reach out to a friend? Do you need to snuggle someone furry with 4 legs? Thinking about what helps, what works for you, getting through hard times. As you get more comfortable with this practice and you know the phrases that resonate with you and you know that really it helps when you put your hand on your chest, this can become a very quick intervention in those difficult moments. Or you can really extend it out into a longer practice and really settle in and let that self-kindness and compassion carry you through. Gently, at your own pace, if your eyes were closed, feel free to open them. Or just coming back at your own pace, maybe looking from side to side, stretching your body, standing up if you need to, and just noticing if that was helpful. There are so many body-based practices that can really help us ground and connect and give ourselves some of what we need. That one's one of my favorites. I want to talk a little bit more explicitly about connection. And there's piles of research that good relationships keep us both physically and emotionally and spiritually healthier. And really quantity doesn't matter. It's quality. It's about who can you be vulnerable and true with. And that really not only does connection help with emotional pain, but we can actually bear physical pain when we're with someone that trusts us and that we trust. It helps keep you cognitively more alive. It has so many downstream effects. And then self-compassion, the research is like abundant, and it's associated with happiness and optimism, positive affect, personal initiative, extroversion, conscientiousness, curiosity, which is the juice of life, and exploration. And that's from Kristen Neff's research. So we are wired for connection, and we can't sort of tell ourselves just to be connected. We actually have to do it. Knowing these things doesn't really make any difference. It's actually doing them. And just doing them a little bit repeatedly makes all the difference in the world. You don't have to go meditate and give all your possessions away and sit on a mountain. You can, for 5 seconds, for 5 minutes, several times a day, start to build those new neural pathways to positivity and calmness and regulation that makes a huge difference and helps build our resilience so we're more able to help weather difficult things when they are sure to come. But it does take planning. So particularly in a pandemic, these sort of spontaneous interactions and connections that many of us have really fed off are much harder to come by. So you really have to actively make it work for yourself. And so what we talked about in the beginning is just starting with yourself, but then you're extending it out to your family, to your little people, to your community. And some of the ways to answer what will really work for you are what brings you joy? Like what lights you up from the inside? What makes you happy? What makes you little and like kind of excited and feel glittery on the inside? That's a great trailhead to sort of lean to as you head towards what you're going to do to help build the scaffolding of your life. When do you feel awe? And for many people, especially in BC, it's these like incredible mountains or these ancient forests. Nature helps us kind of feel like the little tiny humans that we are in the face of all the majesty around us. And really, what feels good? Not what you think you should do, but what really feels good. Everybody is different. And you need to follow what works for you. What helps you stay in the flow if you're doing something and you lose time and you kind of pop up out of it and you're energized, like, what's that? Do more of that. It has some really impactful downstream effects on your nervous system, and it just ripples out in all sorts of ways. So I'm just going to offer 2 of my favorite ones. Got some slides at the end with a long list of things, but again, you just got to pick what resonates with you. In Okinawa, Japan, they have a tradition called a mawai, and this means meeting for a common purpose. And Okinawa is sort of a specific community that was identified because it's one of those blue zone communities where people live longer and are really healthy. And so everyone's looking at these communities and what are you people doing right? Can I get some of that? And a mawai is created when little babies are born. Their parents sort of choose like 4 other little babies to be partners with in life along the journey. And so for the whole life long, you are in a mawai, and there are sort of 3 purposes. You meet together for social connections and have fun. You have some financial responsibilities to each other. So if the bottom falls out, you have a network of support. And then the third thing is you meet together to talk about your common purpose. So it's not your Instagram best day. It's like the real struggles of life. And having this social network of support is one of the preeminent things that researchers think make Okinawa, Japan, one of the places where people live the longest and really resonate with joy in so many ways. So you can build your own mawai. You can pick a few friends, declare this purpose, and start to really connect in a way that makes difference. Now that it's Zoom, you can do it internationally. And you can do this with your kids too. Again, this purposeful gathering for these for connection, for vulnerability, for authenticity, helps build the social network and heart connections that we long for and need for resilience. Another sort of mental health intervention is this idea of forest bathing. Now, many of you might have heard of this because it's just so juicy and delicious, but forest bathing, it also comes out of Japan. They really researched how to live well. And what it is this slow walking and kind of contemplative being in a forest. An old growth forest is best. And what they have found is that the trees create this antimicrobial phytocide that helps to fight disease. And so in one particular study, walking in a forest for 2 hours over 2 days increased your white blood cell, your kind of killer cells that fight infection, by 50%. So if you do one thing, going for a walk or going for a roll or going for a movement in a forest with a trusted other who you can be vulnerable with. Talk to animals in that crazy voice or that fun voice that you might talk to a baby in sort of motherese or like, "Was a good boy," using that voice also kind of helps stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system. And then really explicitly greeting others. When we smile, which is hard to do when we have masks on, but when we explicitly wave and say hi to people, not only do we give a gift, but we get this hit back of positivity. And again, these good sort of love hormones start to flow. So that one is like a multi-pronged happiness intervention and wellness. One of my other favorite things is learning. And there's this incredible free course through Yale University presented by Dr. Laura Santos, and it's called The Science of Wellbeing. She also has a podcast called The Happiness Lab, and it has so many great ideas and really substantive research on what works and what doesn't. Many of the things that we think will make us happy, in fact, doesn't, or that we think will help us regulate, only kind of sends us down the wrong path. For anyone who's a parent, this might be a tough intervention to note, but if you're getting less than 7 hours of sleep, you're chronically sleep deprived. So attending to sleep is one of the most important things you can do for your own mental wellness. Meditation, and it can be a secular, contemplative practice, just even sitting for 5 minutes and noticing what you're noticing in your body makes a huge difference. Exercise is really useful for completing the stress cycle. Emily and Amelia Nagosi have this great book called Burnout, and their supposition is every single day we accumulate lots of stress, and you need to kind of get it out in some way. And walking is one of the ways that is really effective. Everybody's different; they need a different amount of exercise, but even 3 minutes of like push-ups or sit-ups or walking in a spot can really start to tip the scales in your favor. And by scales, I don't mean weight scales. I mean like scales of justice for your like health and happiness. Gratitude practices are really useful. And not the toxic positivity where we are like, I'm fine. And I know everyone else has, it worse than me, which is kind of true. Like if you have a lot of privilege, there are many people who are suffering more than you, but you also may have some difficulties. So honoring both and can be really useful, and feeling gratitude for the gifts and joys of the day or the week or the life can do a lot to expand our goodness and wellness. Acts of service and kindness, really kind of getting clear on your purpose. All of these make a huge difference in our positive outcomes. And that savoring thing I talked about earlier, that positive neuroplasticity, can you just sort of take in the goodness and not sort of like Teflon, as Rick Hansen's term, like not sort of have the good things bounce right off, but sort of let them really stick and settle. It makes a big difference. You may not know that 95% of serotonin, which is one of those positive hormones, and 50% of dopamine, the love and feel good hormone, happens in your gut, not your brain. So really taking care of the food that goes in your body makes a huge difference. Limiting your social media intake and only choosing particular times, like, okay, I will check for 10 minutes a day or only check positive sources. All of these things reliable sources make a big difference as we work on just building sustainable resiliency practices. I've just kind of thrown some of these things up here again. If you want to take a screenshot, you may. Yes, Guy?
I don't mean to interrupt, but we are way over time. So, okay. And we want to make sure that Jesse gets, we're out of time for the questions, but there are some questions that maybe you can maybe address in chat. But right. Then if you could just wrap, thank you.
Thank you. I cannot see the chat. Do you want me to do those now, or should we just go to Jesse and we can answer questions at the end?
Yeah, no, you can just do it privately. If you have time when the other person's presenting, if you want to do that, or at the end is fine too. Maybe it's something we can all address, but yeah, I think we're at 8:53 now.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Galen. That was really nice to hear. I had to kind of turn the light back up after all that. So Sky, do you want to read my bio or should I just jump right in?
I will definitely read it, and
Okay.
I'm just going to ask Amanda to give me back the host for a second.
Okay.
And
I don't actually have, I have a little bit of screen sharing, but I don't have a PowerPoint.
oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to.
I'm also thinking too, I can't really remember when you had planned for this to end. I know that people are probably feeling pretty like sleepy and relaxed.
Well, that was wonderfully relaxing, and maybe you have some playful things to get us a little activated. But I think those are very, very important things, and I realize how important that self-care is, Galen. It is just so important. I just want to read out your bio right now. So Jessie runs Shift Education. So she's a teacher and certified sexual health educator. Through workshops, professional development training, and resources, she forges the way for teachers, caretakers, parents, and grandparents who want to learn how to talk to young people, including diverse learners, about sexuality and other challenging topics without being weird about it. She is the first to say it takes a bit of work, plus a whole lot of humor, with an occasional sangria afterwards, but it's the result of this honest and non-judgmental communication. It is worth every effort. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jessie. Thank you.
So thanks everybody. I got into a pretty good relaxed state there as well. So thank you so much, Galen, for that. And my husband, Brian, has disappeared because he's now putting the kids to bed. So he was able to hear a little bit of what you were saying, Galen, but I'll definitely pass on anything that he didn't hear. So I wanted to talk a little bit about play and how one of the things that we all need, especially now in this kind of overwhelm that we're experiencing, is some lightness. And Galen was talking about that a little bit, like some of those self-care things that lift you up and lift your spirit and bring playfulness back into your life. And so I have some questions for you that I'm going to, again, pop us over to the Padlet. And of course, you can always speak out loud too, if you wish. Some people don't want to necessarily say something out loud and they like the Padlet idea. So I want us to just think actually positively about the things that light us up. So I'm just going to share this screen with you. And then in the chat, here is the link to everybody to get to the Padlet that we're going to be on. And the question I'm asking is, the question I'm asking is, what lights you up? What are the three? You would think that Galen, Brian, and I all got together and did this presentation. That's kind of well formatted, which is also Sky who formatted it. So what lights us up? What are three things you do to light up your mood and bring joy into your life? So I want to remember that also the things that you do and have perhaps discovered over this pandemic also might be something that another person's going to learn from. So please do share those things. I also am a sexual health educator, so don't be afraid to put sex, because that's a really great way to connect with your partner. Sometimes you just need to lay the foundations starting early in the day that you might be successful that night. So, so do remember that that's of course a natural thing that we all, that's really good for us as well. So I see puns, I see an unexpected compliment, especially from my children. Oh, big time. Kids, skiing, running, paying extra attention to meals. Oh, I wish that you were my partner. Brian's an incredible cook, but man, I wish I was, I've got to improve my, I'm stuck in a burrito phase. Playing with my kids, compliments on my cooking. Oh, it's so nice. Singing out of key, falling asleep reading book. I think that probably was, it just lost my spot. Foot massages, yes, please. Dancing, singing, Laughing, playing outside, especially skiing, amazing. You're getting up on those mountains, and how much that invigorates us being up in the mountains and in the forest, like Galen was talking. And it's not a surprise that there's science that actually backs that, which is pretty amazing. Random acts of kindness. Putting music on and dancing with my family, love it. Playing with my cats and my horse. Your horse, that's amazing. How amazing is it to have a horse right now? Noticing the small moments of kids' growth. Playing music, watching TV shows, listening to podcasts. Yes, and please, this is a perfect opportunity. Share your podcasts, share your favorite TV shows, share your favorite songs if you can remember even just who it's by. Those are the things that really help us feel connected too. So I'm going to share a couple of mine. I've been listening to, I really am a big fan of comedy, so Smartless is a pretty funny one. And another one is I listen to a lot of Conan O'Brien, or Conan Needs a Friend. I get a lot of laughs on the daily with that one. And also I watch Jim Gaffigan. He has 5 kids, so if you ever feel overwhelmed, you can make prayers for his partner that looks after the 5 kids. I also watch, I do think Kevin Hart's very funny, but also I'm just thinking of, Sarah Silverman. Okay, so there's a few comedians for you. If anybody else here, Tig Notaro, amazing. I love Tig Notaro. She is so funny. So please keep sharing. We're going to come back to that. I do have some more questions for you, and I have a few funny little clips to get us going. Okay. Oops. Sorry about all of this size changing here. Okay. So I just wanted to show you a few funny things as a reminder that there is always lightness around us. And as much as we like to take breaks from social media, there are some things that we can purposely watch online that bring us joy. And also, of course, there are things that you can watch that can be pretty heavy. So let's take a look at this one. There we go. I'm not sure if you've ever seen Celeste Barber. Can you see this right now? Yes, you can. Okay, so this is funny. There's not, let's see where the sound is. Oh, I gotta turn this off. From the top, take it drop, get some light. Get a bucket in a mouth, get some light. So one of the things I like to do when it comes to social media is that I like to remind myself that there's so many things out there that are perfect and exactly how you should be, and amazing bodies and all these followers and all these lifestyle videos. And I think sometimes it's really important to remember that there's funny people online too that are also real human beings showing real things. So here's a picture of my boys just falling down the hill. Remembering how play actually works is that you're not doing it because you're good at it. You're doing it actually because you guys know that big hill, it's right off. So cute, they're way bigger than that now. But I just wanted to show that clip too, because the piece about play that's so important to remember is that play is actually a state of relaxation. And so if we can do things to get ourselves into a state of relaxation, it really helps ease our whole nervous system when we're feeling really activated. Here's another little funny clip for you. I don't know if this has ever happened to anybody when you're doing something like gardening and then you realize, oh yeah, right, I'm a parent. I'm supposed to make sure that my kids are okay right now. So that moment is something that most of us have experienced, and certainly through the pandemic where we've been looking at our phone for too long, or we've been watching a show, or we've maybe like snuck away from our family to try to have some time on our own. So do be easy on yourself. Remember that, at the end of the day, we really are in this together. We're in this with our family. I want to watch this clip because one of the pieces here that I think is essential, this is another neuroscientist named Huberman, and Dr. Huberman. And what he talks about here is that in order for our behavior to change, we actually need to start with changing our behavior, and all these other things flow after. So those things that we wrote about how we take care of ourselves and how we lift our spirit, we actually have to actively bring them into our lives in order for play to happen, right? We have to actively start a pillow fight with your kids, make sure nothing's breakable around, or that there's no like leftover smoothies from earlier that day so you don't make more work for yourself. But what are the things that you can do to initiate play in your home to bring lightness to each day? Because we're in this, like Galen was saying, we're in this for the long haul, right? This is not going away anytime soon. So we need to actively make changes that are going to create behavior change, and as a result, feeling change, and as a result, pattern change. So I'm just going to make sure this rolls from the beginning. So one sec here, go back to the beginning. I'm going to play this clip, and then we're going to talk about some of those small goal setting. We're not talking about big goal setting, but I want you to think of 1 or 2 things that you can do even tonight that are to ease yourself. So Galen was teaching you some really excellent skills around actual behavior change that can happen right now tonight. It might be that you're going to listen to a visualization as you lie in bed. Maybe you're not a meditator yet, but that might be a step towards meditation. Maybe like my husband Brian meditates literally every day. I don't meditate, but when I meditate, I fall asleep, and I'm like, great, I fall asleep. That's excellent. That's a win for me. I'm totally okay with that. So what are the ways that we change our behavior, and then the voices in our head follow? So here we go.
Because if you think about sensation, perception, feeling, thought, and behavior, actually the way to control our nervous system and feel the way we want to feel is to run that backwards. Behavior, thoughts. So if you change your behavior, then generally your thoughts, your feelings, and your perceptions change.
Yeah.
And everyone tries to come at it from the other end.
Yeah.
And I really think that if neuroscience has anything to offer, it's some understanding of what the underlying chemicals and neural circuits are. But the sooner that the human animal, the human species can start to understand that our feelings and our thoughts and our memories and all that is very complicated, but that when behaviors are very concrete and they are the control panel for the rest of it. I don't want to relegate feelings. Feelings are extremely important. I don't want to relegate perception. They're extremely important. But when it comes to wanting to shift the way that you function, to get better or to perform better or to show up better or to move away from things like addictive behaviors, it's behavior first, thoughts, feelings, and perceptions follow. Because if you think...
Okay, so let's head back over to that Padlet. And what we're going to do on the Padlet is we're going to think about, and this might also be part of a discussion as well. And I'm comfortable to get a little bit more vulnerable, because I can tell you that I am somebody who I'm married to somebody who's very committed and follow through with his habits and his behaviors. So when he says he's going to do something for himself, he does that. I also know that part of it is that I was trained as a woman to kind of put other people before myself. And I know that people that are volunteering their time on the PAC, there's a lot of people probably that are doing a lot of things for other people before they show up for themselves. And so it's taken me a long time, and I'm not there yet, to show up for myself, to do exercise. And the behavior, the feeling that comes for me right after finishing exercise is incredible. I go from like a low mood, feeling, low, lethargic, sloth-like, to invigorated. I can feel the oxygen in my body. So it's not a surprise that when we talk really meaningfully about the purpose of exercise in our lives, it helps regulate everything else. So I'm doing my best to show up for myself, because it's not that I don't love exercise. I actually love getting out there, playing, running, walking in the forest, all those things I love. It's just not my habit to put that first. It's my habit to make lunches. It's my habit to make my coffee. That's probably my number one habit, to get my coffee going, and then everything else follows. But it's not my habit to show up for myself first. And so how do we make small steps? And many of you might already be showing up for that. So your goal might be actually, how do you get to bed earlier? Or what's your goal around laughing every day? Because you've been taking life really seriously and you've been digging in and working so hard. You're showing up for yourself with exercise. You're showing up for your kids and your partner. But how are you showing up to lift yourself up, to take a break, to take it a little bit more easy on yourself? Because all of us have something that we're working on. And I feel like in order to sustain and prepare ourselves for what's going on right now, we have to keep practicing that behavior that's going to get us where we want to go. So I would like for everybody to write down something that's a small goal for themselves right now that they're working on. For example, perhaps if you're the person that has the horse, maybe your thing is that you want to actually just have an hour a day where you spend with your horse and you're not doing anything. You're literally just there. You're in the same space together. You're petting your horse. You're hanging out with your horse. You're talking to your horse. You're, looking at their legs. You're admiring their muscles. You're not actually doing anything. You're just being with that animal and the majestic animal that they are, right? Playing songs loudly. You're wrong about podcast. What does that mean? I'm not sure.
Oh, it's the name of a podcast.
Really? Oh my God.
It's a good one.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I was like, am I wrong about something? Did I call it the wrong thing? Sleeping 8 hours a day. So if that is your goal, to sleep out 8 hours a day, what is the behavior change that needs to happen to make that happen? One of my simple goals is to drink at least one of these a day. Like that. I mean, I am simple, my friends. I'm trying to really hit some simple goals here. And it's not that easy. I really don't do it every day. You know that feeling when you go to the bathroom at like 5 o'clock and it smells like coffee and you're like, wow, okay, I need to really change my behavior. Okay. So at the end of the day, we all have something that we're working on. I see one person saying drinking more water with lemon. Amazing. Okay. And I'm going to put mine in here, and yours might be doing a ski day by yourself, right? What are the conditions that you need to set that up for yourself? So let's take a moment. I'm going to be quiet for a second while we all think about what is something that we can do starting tomorrow in the morning to help get closer to that behavior change.
Are we putting this on the Padlet?
I would love to see it on the Padlet, because I feel like writing down your goal, we know that when we write it down, it makes it more real and it makes it more possible that it's going to happen. And again, this isn't about achievement, people. Okay. I just told you that I don't drink enough water. Okay. This is about low bar goals that are possible for big change for you. Oh, I love that. 1 day a week with no to-do list. Short exercises every day. So for people that are writing things, I want, for example, with the short exercises every day, I would love you to add, what are those exercises? So this is part of that SMART goals: simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So the more detail we can add to our goal, the more likely it's going to happen. Stretching for 10 minutes in the morning, giving yourself permission to say no. So I want you to think about, what are you going to say no to? So ignore the email. I've been setting up a goal for myself, because right now is the busiest season for sexual health educators, that I do get requests every day, that I am allowing myself to just not email on the weekend. I'm making a really strict rule. And I feel like it's actually like trying to create social change, that it's unacceptable to interrupt people's weekends, and that I don't want to interfere with your weekend and your family life. I want to be a stand for you to enjoy your time and not feel the pressure that you need to reply to me right away. Charging the phone outside the bedroom. Poof, yes. Can you start tonight? No phone in the bedroom. Can you start tonight? Give yourself permission to say no. Ignore the email, ignore Facebook. Do not feel the need to reply instantly. Breathe deeper again and being conscious of breath again. I am breathing way shallow these days. I have a friend that actually has as a regulation tool. She has 5 tattooed on her finger or on her thumb, and like between her thumb and forefinger right here, so that she looks down and remembers to take 5 deep breaths. Drink that glass of water instead of just pouring it. Oh my God. How many times do you pour the glass for your kids and then don't drink the water yourself? All the time. Yes, less evening doom scrolling. Too many things. Honestly, I think I just need to pick one behavior, and that's part of the problem, right? So many options. And you see this with kids too, right? If we ask kids too many things, or if we make a request with too many things, they get overwhelmed. And so same with us, right? If we are giving ourselves too much information, sometimes it feels so overwhelming that we just want to stop and not do any of it. I don't know if that is if anyone relates to that when there's so much coming at you, sometimes the nervous system is just responding so quickly that the overwhelm is too much, that it feels better just to almost bury your head in the sand and pretend that there's nothing. Because it's like, where do I even start? And I'm not sure if you're feeling this these days, but it feels like when we were in the pandemic, from the beginning, like we're coming up on a year when things really started to get different. March 13th is kind of around, which was also Friday the 13th. So as things now are changing, things felt really slow there. It felt like everybody kind of took a breath and just was settling in. And now it's feeling like things are ramping up again, that everything's ramping up. Expectations are ramping up. What we should be doing with our kids ramping up. What can I sign my kids up for? The pool is open, but now I need to sign up for this period of time when the pool's open, and I didn't get in because you're up against this many people, right? So stop, right? We just need to stop. We need to stop and think about, how can I bring this sense of lightness and play into my life? So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute. And thank you everybody for your wonderful contributions there. And I just want to talk about a few more things about play. So we talked about what are those things that lift you up. Here are some fun ideas to connect with your kids at home. So I want you to, and if you want, we're winding down here, we're getting close to that state of closing up and going to sleep soon. So if you feel like lying down or get comfortable, turn your camera off, do whatever you want to do. I want you to just actually lock back into your imagination and your breath, which Galen already kind of activated that part of our body. So we should be able to get back to that quickly. So I want you to picture this. Kids are always playing. Even teenagers are silly and playful. So I'm going to tell you a funny story. My son was, I would say 3 years old, maybe 3.5. And he was very clever. So I used to let him water the garden. This was when we were living in East Van. So he'd be watering the garden, and he realized that you can switch the garden hose to do the jet spray. And so I was watching him. I was kind of busy getting dinner going and stuff. And this was a summer night, watching him water the garden. And then he said, "Hey, Mom, come outside." So I came outside, And he thought it would be the best and most funny thing. And it was definitely funny, thinking that play is about going beyond ourselves. It's about growing and learning and having an idea and then implementing the idea with no end result. It's actually about we're doing something that we don't necessarily know the outcome. And that's often why it's shocking and funny and interesting, and it's play. And so I walked out the door and he started spraying me right away with the jet spray. And of course, thought it was the funniest thing in the world. I thought it was funny for about a second. And then what happened is I thought, okay, I have to outsmart this little guy. So I was saying, stop, 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 activated, of course, like reacting. And also laughing, like thinking this little guy is so clever. And this is actually like very, very funny, but I don't want to be sprayed with freezing cold water and I don't want water in the house. So then I go through the house, down the front stairs, around the side, and try to be like a ninja so that I could sneak to get him to turn off the hose. But the way that the backyard was situated, no matter if I was at the top of the stairs here and he was aiming the water at me, or I was at the bottom here at the little kind of garden alley, he's still going to get me. So he sees me come around the corner, starts spraying me here. And then, so I literally, he soaked me. He completely just like, there's no stopping a 3.5-year-old. This is the best possible opportunity for him to get me as wet as he possibly can until I can run to him fast enough to grab the hose and turn it off. So when I think of that story, I think in that moment, it was funny, but I was also reactive because of course it's cold water. My nervous system is, totally activated. I was a bit frustrated. I was also cooking dinner. When I think of it now, it's one of these pleasant, beautiful thoughts of play that I had with my kid. When I think of the memories that are best in my home, I think of moments of playing. When we are in play, we're in a state of rest. We're in a state of calm. Our nervous system is in a place where we can practice letting out different emotions in a safe way because it's contained in that space of play. So I invite you to think about, when was the last time that you played with your family, where there was full-on laughter, there was silliness, the seriousness was gone, and it was a space for you to just enjoy each other's company and to truly connect? So as you think of that moment of play, what were the conditions that made that happen? Was it that the dishes were away? Was it that your kids had just come home from school and you had a little bit of extra time to yourself to get things ready? Was it that you had picked up your kids and there was no evening agenda? That list that we're talking about of things to get done was done, or you had just said, you know what, I got done as much as I'm going to, and you let go of this expectation of completion. So let's think about what was fun. What was the play that was happening in that moment? So we're going to go back now to the Padlet, and I'm going to invite you to write down on the Padlet what kind of play happens in your home. And of course, it can be very silly. Pillow fights yesterday, awesome. Horseplay, board games, dance parties, kitchen party dances, or kitchen dance parties, art, at bedtime, horribly. Wrestling. I also want to say, just as a sexual health educator, wrestling and tickle fights that are consensual are such a wonderful way to practice embodying consent. So having that wrestling fight, and then when the person says stop, and then stopping, and then a lot of the time kids just need that breath, and then they go, okay, again. Right? So they do really want it. Jokes and comedy routines, amazing. Silly cooking experiments, peanut butter, wonton, wrestling, tickling, imitating YouTubers. Wow, this is awesome. Full-on wrestling battles on king bed. Yes, blanket forts, reading and sharing interesting things together, and good conversations. High-fiving. I would love to hear too from people that are playing with teenagers, because I know teenagers really do want to play, and sometimes they don't really know, they don't really remember how to. They do, but they're kind of like bigger now, and they're stronger now, so they're trying to figure out like, how do I play with my family, with my parents. Pruning, amazing. Gardening, that's a really great idea and a reminder. Drama games, pretending we are other characters. Excellent. So then the other thing I wanted to ask is, I wanted to give some suggestions. Now, I do work with teenagers a lot, and one of the things that I notice is, I had this story that was quite wonderful. Nerding out on certain things. I see this was coming up right now. Yes, on Dungeons and Dragons. Yes. Oh man, kids are so into it. My husband's been playing some Dungeons and Dragons with the kids, and they're just like chomping at the bit to get back to it, because the imagination is so exciting. So one of the things I wanted to just go over really quickly as we wrap up is thinking about, I want to tell a quick story, and then we're going to talk about a few other ways that we can play at home, just to get those ideas going, with the idea that when we play, we're able to regulate ourselves better, and our mood is lifted, and we're way more prepared to continue parenting. And I see a chat, 1 second. I can't use the Padlet. I missed the link. No problem. I will repost it right here. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to offer was this story. So one mom, actually was a Waldorf mom too. So she was just like extra nervous about the video gaming that was happening for her son. Just like, oh man, he's on games all the time. I don't know. I just feel uncomfortable with it. And then one day she was like, hang on a second. I've never even video gamed myself. You know what? It's a pandemic. Show me how to do this. Let's see. What are you playing? I want to play it too. And so there was mom, who had been pretty critical of gaming, sitting down, being taught by her teenage son, who was very engaged in video gaming, about gaming. And so I think that at first they started playing Minecraft, and then they got into some adventure games, and she loved it. It was super fun. So before they knew it, she had a headset on. This was like the friend headset that they had left over, and he was wearing his headset. They're talking back and forth, and they're on this like crazy adventure together online, on their game. And it was such an incredible change and transformation for their relationship, because something that I think there was not intentionally, but some shame and kind of feeling of feeling bad about playing games from his perspective, and her not wanting to put that on him, but also just like all the messaging parents get about screen time and video gaming and blah, blah, blah. It's not good for you. And how do we create balance? And so here she realized, wow, this is really fun. It totally makes sense why you're playing this. And so because she was so open to playing, he opened up and had more space to talk about bringing balance into his life around how much he was gaming. And so now they game together, and they play games together. They're connecting with some of the other friends. She's part of that dialogue and that conversation. Sometimes, of course, he doesn't want her to play, but a lot of the time they do play together and they have a great time. So thinking about what are ways that we can kind of re-look at things that are happening in our life from a different perspective. And so here are a few ideas. Oh, and I see a few more ideas here. Creating high-fiving. So that sounds kind of like a secret handshake that's happening. Tickle fights, charades, family crafting videos as a family. Oh, super fun. I love these ideas. So now I'm going to give you a few more ideas that I came up with that other kids really liked, which is, okay, so talking about what makes you laugh. So kind of like a laughing, trying to make the other person laugh, which you already brought up with games. Another one is a YouTube off. So if you're watching YouTube, and it could be kids YouTube or it could be other, you can kind of set the parameters if you have younger kids, where each person picks a YouTube that they like, and that the goal isn't just to watch a YouTube, but the goal is actually to make the other person laugh. So it's probably a YouTube they've already seen, and you have to try to make the other parent laugh or the other kid laugh. And then whoever makes the person laugh, the next person, the person who laughed, has to go next. Okay. Playing video games with your kids, go outside together. This is a really fun one, is going down to the beach and collecting a whole bunch of rocks and just throwing the rocks into the water as far as you can. No goal, again, it's just literally throwing them into the water. Another one is setting up a target practice. So bringing down like a can or something, or a log down to the beach and trying to hit that log. Trying to stack the rocks is another fun one. Sharing your music together. So doing similar to the YouTube, but with the dance off or the dancing, where each person plays a different song. And then creating, this is just for partners, obviously, if you have somebody at home that you're intimate with. Sometimes we don't feel like being intimate because we're tired and things like that, but creating the conditions to be intimate with your partner, have sex. Yes, I said it. So creating this opportunity where it takes build up, right? You need to kind of build the tension. Can I run you a bath, pour some wine for the person, make them a nice dinner? So how are we kind of spoiling each other when we're having a hard time? And then the last one, which is also Galen brought up, which is calling a friend that you haven't talked to in a while. So who are your people that you need to talk to? So I see that it's 9:30 right on the dot. And I know that my kids really want me to go kiss them goodnight. I really hope, as we go back to the Padlet, that you commit to what you wrote down on here. I'm just going to scroll up so you can see it. But what is that one behavior change that you can do for yourself? It might have been a breathing technique that Galen taught you. It might have been an idea of just drinking more water tomorrow and making it measurable by drinking 2 or 1.5 of your particular water bottle. It might be, I'm going to watch something funny so I can laugh out loud, right? But do something for yourself, because we are in this long haul. We need laughter and light to carry us through this next year. Your kids need laughter and love, and they love connecting with you physically. I talked to the kids today a lot, grade K to 7, and I've done this all week. What is the kind of loving touch that you enjoy at home, and encouraging kids to ask for the touch that they love. So I'm just going to end with that, and then I'll hand it over to Sky. Kids say snuggling with their families and reading books. They say laughing and tickle fights and wrestling. They say, especially when people stop and listen when they ask them to. They say snuggling with an animal. They say having a bath with your family if you're, for the younger kids, if your bath's big enough. They say going for bike rides, like planned bike rides with the family. They say playing basketball and playing different sports outside, even if it's just a quick pickup game. They say making slime at home with their family and getting permission to be able to do that. So kids have lots of things that they sure love to do with you. So fill yourself up and tell your kids what kind of loving touch you like, because the next thing you know, you're like the person on here that's getting a foot rub from their kid and you're exchanging foot rubs. So I hope you take good care of yourselves and that you have healthy, happy, and pleasurable lives going ahead. Hi, Bri.
Thank you so much.